This video is gonna get so much hatred, but recently I studied astrology and I realized that it's in my life path and spiritual evolution to speak the truth so that more people will benefit from saving time and money, when it comes to finding the right teacher. If you get triggered, it's not my business, okay? If you have your experiences of learning from the wrong teachers or right teachers, please do feel free to comment below because I would love to hear from you, okay? So she dragged me to this German classical singing teacher whom I'm eternally grateful for. There's also a misconception that if a teacher can sing well, then he or she can definitely teach well. That's definitely not true. The reason I'm making this video is because recently I came across a student who told me that she didn't know that she can change a singing teacher, and I was astonished to hear that. She didn't realize that point, and maybe a lot of you didn't realize that too. Yes, you can change a singing teacher, and I think she thinks that any singing teacher that she comes across must be good and able to deliver, anything and everything that she needs. But that's not true, and I'm going to share with you my experience of my personal singing teachers. Alright, so personally I had 3 singing teachers. The first one is a classical singing teacher, and when I first got to know her, I was only like in my early 20s, young and really excited to learn singing, properly for the first time. And the fact that she's a classical singing teacher must be good, right? And actually she was, she taught me the proper techniques to breathe and support, and so through her teaching and guidance, I actually got my certificate and I was happy about it. But I think after that she couldn't continue to teach for whatever reasons. I can't remember, it's more than 20 years. So I had to go to another teacher to continue my learning, and I went to a very well-known music school here in Singapore, and I was taught, fortunately, by a very established celebrity singer because she's a pop singer. So through her I learned other stuff that maybe weren't emphasized by the other classical singing teacher. So the point is, whichever teacher you go to, they may have different things to teach you because they were taught differently as well. So it's one thing you want to consider when you choose a singing teacher. Anyway, coming back to this celebrity singing teacher, I did learn some stuff from her, but I feel that on hindsight, I didn't really learn the theory of why I was supposed to do certain techniques, I was only told that I had to do this and that, like my mouth has to be this particular shape, or I had to do a certain thing a certain way, but I wasn't taught the theory or why. Okay, so that also implied that I couldn't really, use the knowledge, to transfer to another song. Okay, so maybe I could do well for this particular song, but it doesn't mean that I can actually, do the same for the next song that I want to sing. Alright, so but under her, I had a lot of fun because, of her personality. She's more fun and more jovial, and she gave me some opportunities to record demos. And as a young singer who wanted to be an artist, a recording artist, that was so exciting to enter, a studio. It was her home studio, but I recorded some songs, and it gave me, an opportunity to dip my toes into how professional demo recording was supposed to be like. So that was fun. And after that, I was dragged to another singing teacher because by then I had joined a professional a cappella group, and the leader of the group who recruited me was saying that implying that I sang terribly. Okay, so she dragged me to this German classical singing teacher whom I'm eternally grateful for, because when I took his lessons, it was for the first time that I understood how singing lessons should be like, because he really broke down the theory behind the techniques, why I need to do certain things this way and not because I need to do it, So it wasn't the kind of lessons where I sang scales just for singing scales. It's more of like, we're doing this because I want you to feel this so that you can do this kind of teaching method. And I really appreciated that because it gave me such good foundation about what singing truly is about. I think it's very different when you are just told to do things compared to the reasons why you're supposed to do this. That opened up my world because the theories behind the techniques stuck with me, because he kept nagging about the same theories and concepts And it really forced me to go towards a certain direction, towards vocal freedom. I learned from him for about 2 years, every single week, maybe 1 or 2 off, I can't remember, it's too long ago, but it was almost every single week I paid out of my pocket during my career transition to sing better, at my pubs and my a cappella gigs, because I really want to sing like Celine Dion and Whitney Houston at that time. Yeah, but that was my ambition, right? I wanted to sing well. Not necessarily famous, but I wanted to sing well. I want to know why these professional singers can do certain things. They can hit the high notes with such freedom, and I can't. And I really want to be able to know these techniques, And I think under his teaching, classical singing techniques, I really understood what singing is about. Now at this point, you may be confused because you thought that classical singing techniques is only for classical singing, right? For opera. But actually, classical singing techniques to me is the foundation of singing. It's the roots of singing. It's like the ancestry of good singing, okay? So the difference between classical singing techniques and pop singing is just that we need to tweak a few things to sound pop. It's almost like the fundamentals are the same, and that gives you a very strong powerhouse foundation, so that when you sing high, you can still sound powerful. But we tweak a few things here and there. It's almost like putting on a filter so that you can sound pop. And pop can mean anything from like top 40s, jazz, R&B, anything. So with him, I sang all sorts of things, okay? Even in different languages that he didn't understand. So it's not constrained to language. It's not constrained to genre. The techniques support human voice if you want to sing, basically, okay? Alright, so that's my story. Basically, I had 3 singing teachers, and I would say that he's still my singing teacher up to this day. After that 2 years of almost weekly training, I still continued for another 5 years on and off because, that's when I really started turning professional. I had album releases and, performing intensely with challenging songs, so sometimes I went back to him for very important performances, to check in and that kind of stuff. When do you think it's time to change a singing teacher? For me, I just got dragged. I had to change singing teachers kind of feeling. But I can imagine if you are sort of taking lessons from a teacher, you may not know when it's time to actually change a singing teacher. For me, now that, on hindsight, and I've been teaching for so many years, and every time a new student comes in, I always ask, who did you learn from and what did you learn? Not because I want to be, to know more, but because I want to know what this student had learned so that I don't have to repeat things, right? Because they're paying for the lesson time. I want to make sure that I can cut down on whatever they already know. I don't have to repeat. But I realized that a lot of students, don't learn anything that I teach, even though they had taken lessons for, up to 2-3 years. And I don't say this exaggeratingly. It actually is a statistic. It actually is a statistic, and it's astonishing, You should consider changing a singing teacher when you feel that you're not improving. And of course, this is really subjective because before we point fingers at teachers, I think it's important to first ask yourself, have you put in the work? Have you been practicing? Do you really understand what the teacher was talking in terms of techniques, and are you able to do the techniques during class, and then are you able to replicate, or did you even put in time and effort to try to replicate the techniques, at home? Because if you did not put in the time and effort to try to replicate, or at least try to find that back, of what you try to do in class, you're not putting in the work, then you cannot fault the teachers, okay? So, however, if you had, but you feel that I don't really understand what the teacher is talking about, and it always feels like kind of guesswork, even during class, or then maybe it's time to find another teacher. Maybe the teacher couldn't explain to you properly, how singing techniques are like. And yeah, maybe it's time to change, Okay, so the first reason is if you don't think you are progressing, and if you don't think that a teacher is able to properly explain to you what you're supposed to do,
then maybe it's time to change to another teacher, okay?
There is also a misconception that if a teacher can sing well, then he or she can definitely teach well. That's definitely not true, okay? Because it's almost as good as saying a lecturer in university because he's brilliant and therefore he can teach well. And we know how it goes. It's not always the case, okay? So somebody may be brilliant in something, very talented, maybe even naturally talented, but he or she may not be able to teach whatever he or she is doing well. And the funniest thing is, a natural singer already naturally can sing, which means that he or she may not necessarily know what he or she did well. And it also means that they never went through the path of learning from scratch, of understanding how a beginner feels like, to learn from zero, to go from 0 to 100 kind of feeling, the challenges and the obstacles and how to fix the obstacles and problems. That's why I think in this day and age, it's very important to find teachers who has a history of transforming voices already, before you decide to sign up. I think it's really important, there's a track record somewhere, where you know that people have been transformed.
Now, the second reason you should change teacher is when you feel that the teacher is belittling you or making you very tense and nervous or anxious, during lessons, okay? Because that's not how singing lessons are supposed to be like. Why? Because the number one thing that kills the voice is tension. Okay, so tension is the number one voice killer. Okay, if you don't remember anything from this video, just remember this, okay? Because when a teacher makes you feel really scaredy cat and, maybe even scolding you. I've heard of singing teachers who scold their students, just to make sure that the students get the point. The students get tensed up, and with tensed muscles all over, you can't sing. Because singing is an expression where you need to feel relaxed, where you need to feel like, I can be who I am. And singing is so vulnerable. You are basically, it takes so much out of you to just come out of the box to, to sing and express yourself. You cannot be held back and feel tensed up. That's the last thing you want in a singing lesson, okay? So if your teacher is aggressive to you, even passive aggressive, no, just change a teacher. Okay, you want a teacher who can make you feel it's okay to express yourself, it's okay to feel relaxed, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think this is so important. It's okay to make mistakes during lessons, because if you don't make all the mistakes during lessons, how can you improve? It's almost like saying you're not supposed to fall down while learning to ride the bike. It's not possible, okay? So make sure your teacher allows you the space to make mistakes and encourages, I wouldn't say encourages mistakes, but say, for example, you made that mistake there because you did this. It's okay, so now let's do this instead. Again, try out. Because to me, I think singing lessons should be about exploration of the voice, exploration of singing, so we are bound to make mistakes and there shouldn't be any judgment. Okay, so a teacher should be non-judgmental, I would say, because we hold the space for people to make mistakes so that you can feel safe every time you make mistakes and not be judgmental on yourself, and be okay with trying out new things, new techniques for progress. Otherwise, if you feel that you're making progress, go ahead and stick to the current teacher. I think it's great if you're improving. Now, you should feel improvement. Well, this is subjective, right? But I think you should feel improvement after 3 months. After 3 months, if you think that you still cannot hit the high notes, then maybe you should also change a teacher. In my classes, of course it's one-to-one classes, right? In my classes, my students should be able to belt by 3 months. That's my standard, okay? If you cannot belt by 3 months, typically it's because you have some kind of psychological issues where you feel you cannot really express yourself, like you're scared of speaking loudly, you're not used to shouting, you come from a household where you're being penalized for shouting or being loud. the kind of repressive environment, then yes, maybe this kind of people, they may take longer time to belt, meaning to sing high notes powerfully. But within 3 months or maybe 5 months max, you should feel that you're able to do that. If you cannot, I think you should maybe change a teacher, okay? Because don't waste your time and money.
The third reason I think you should consider changing a singing teacher is if the teacher doesn't talk much about vocal support. Okay, so vocal support is actually so important. Most teachers will know that it's not good to breathe from the chest. We know that we're supposed to breathe deep. However, most of the beginner students will not know that there are actually a few methods or ways or factions to teach singing. So I think this is something that, may get me a lot of dislikes on this video. But I want to be honest, that the way I was taught is from the classical, way of singing, classical singing techniques and all that. So for this kind of a faction, in a way, we were taught the importance of belly support. Okay, and so for me, in my 20 plus years of teaching experiences and performing experiences, I know for a fact that if I do not use my belly support, there's no way in hell I can belt, meaning to sing high notes powerfully. There's no way I can do that without damaging my voice. Okay, so belly support is really, really important. And to learn it correctly, you have to make sure you find the right teacher, because there are some teachers who do overteach. When you do belly support, you may end up feeling really tensed, or you may also feel like the teachers do not teach or touch on belly support much or at all. And this is something, that you need to consider, like, I've been learning from this teacher for some time, but I'm not really progressing much, or I still feel tense all over here, So typically, I feel it's because you're not taught how to use belly support correctly. So maybe you want to consider giving other teachers a chance to teach you how to use belly support correctly. Okay, it shouldn't feel like you're tensing your whole body too much when you're using belly support, but you also should not feel like you shouldn't be using belly support when you sing, because if you're not supporting from the belly, you have to support from the throat, okay, or other parts of your body, okay? If you're not using much support anywhere, then you probably are not singing with much power. This could be one of your reasons why you should change a teacher. Alright, so that's my 3 main points of why you should change singing teachers. If you hit any of the points above.
Alright, so speaking of that, if you're interested to learn from me, yes, this is a shameless plug. You're welcome to check out my online academy. It's now open for registration. The first half of the most important fundamental module is open and it's free. Okay, so from that module alone, you will be taught, how to breathe correctly, how to open up your throat, how you are supposed to sound like, because I give demonstrations inside these videos, and you get a mini textbook that you can download for free. Okay, so please do check them out before I close them off sometime in the future.
This is actually for international students, so anybody who is not living in Singapore, if you're in different time zones, you can't take one-to-one lessons with me because it's out of your budget. It's alright, because I'm gonna translate everything and put everything into this platform, and you can still learn from me, okay? And there will be group coaching as well if you can make the time zone.
Alright, so any questions, do feel free to comment below, okay? I'd love to hear from you.
Hey there, want more of such content? Click like and subscribe.